I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a tag video for you. This is the reading habits tag and I was tagged by Tiffany from Tiff Talks Pages, who I've been chatting with recently about a couple of the things that are on this list. So I was really excited when she tagged me, so thank you very much, Tiffany. I will leave a link to her video and her response to this tag as well, so that you can go check it out. So this tag is all about reading habits and we're going to jump straight into the questions. Question number one is, do you have a certain place at home for reading? And my answer is yes. I talked about this recently, I think in a members vlog. I tend to read on my couch. You know, back when I lived at home with my parents, I used to read in my room and things like that because that was my quiet space. But obviously in my own place, I would prefer to keep my bedroom and my bed for sleeping because I have terrible sleeping habits. So I tend to read on the couch. Depending on what stage of the reading process I'm in, I'm either sitting up or potentially just passed out like a sloth in some very sprawled out position while reading. It's also a very convenient, I mean, most of the spaces in my apartment are very convenient because everything's about 10 steps from the kitchen, but it means that if I need to get snacks or drinks, I don't have to go very far. Occasionally I might like to sit outside on the balcony, but as I said in a previous video, I would have to clean and there are spiders out there at the moment and I'm not ready to deal with the spiders. But I do have a really lovely deck area and in summer it is a really nice space to sit outside and read because I don't get afternoon sun, I get morning sun, so it's nice and cool by the time I have reading time. Question two is bookmark or random piece of paper, and the answer is generally neither because I have a ton of bookmarks. Like there are bookmarks all over my bookshelf, but I very rarely actually have them on hand when I'm reading. If I'm going to mark a place in a physical book, I usually typically have my page flags. Actually, this was the same answer as Tiffany's. I typically use these because I literally just shove them in there because I'm usually using them with the book that I'm reading. If I happen to have something else handy, I might do that. Sometimes if I'm only going for, you know, a couple of minutes to grab a drink or something like that, I'll just put the book down flat and leave the page open. I have also been known to dog ear pages because I'm a heathen, but you know what? They're my books, I can do what I want with them. I would never do that with a library book or someone else's book, I only do it with my own books. Question three asks, can you just stop reading or do you have to stop after a chapter or a certain amount of pages? Typically speaking, I prefer to stop at chapter breaks. I just find that's easier to keep track of what's going on. I will, if I have to stop immediately because I'm out like reading before an appointment or something like that, just finish to the end of the paragraph and then, you know, that's fine. But typically speaking, I would prefer to stop at the end of a chapter just because it makes it easier for me to pick up where the story left off. Question four is, do you drink or eat while reading? I do drink. It depends on what I've got on hand. Sometimes it's water, sometimes it's a soft drink or soda stream, or occasionally if I feel like having an actual drink, it might be a G&T, but it just depends on what time of year it is and what time of day it is and how I'm feeling. In terms of eating, again, it depends. Usually if I'm reading on my Kindle, I will probably snack a little bit more just because I find that's easier because I can hold the Kindle with one hand and I can eat. It also means I don't get smudgy fingers all over my books because that's just a thing. But yeah, most of the time if I'm eating and reading, it's snacky food rather than a meal. I can do that, but I tend to get distracted if I've got more than just sort of things that I can throw in my mouth really quickly. Question five is multitasking. Can you listen to music or watch TV while reading? I cannot watch TV. The TV is very rarely on in my place anyway. And if I am going to have music on in the background, it has to be something that's very ambient. If I want to put something on just because I want some background noise, what I'll typically do is jump onto YouTube and grab something like a crackling fireplace or something like that. A channel that I really like is Ambient Sounds. They have these really gorgeous soundscapes for, you know, popular movies and TV shows and things like that, as well as some general sort of nature stuff. My favorite ones from there are their Jurassic Park and a couple of their Pirates of the Caribbean soundscapes, which I can put on really, really low. Like we're talking volume level 3 max can be on in the background while I'm reading. Question six is reading at home or reading everywhere. Typically speaking, I read my books for me at home. Or if I'm traveling because I don't drive, I use public transport, I'll read while I'm on public transport. I've talked about this many times on my channel. I do like audiobooks, but I really struggle to listen to an audiobook and process everything that's happening without having the physical book in front of me. I can do it if it's a reread because I know the story already. So in that case, if I'm out walking or exercising or things like that, I can listen to an audiobook, but it has to be a reread. I can't really take my books to work with me. I'm a primary school teacher and I actually don't get that much time to stop and read anything during the day. I do read a lot during the day because I'm constantly reading to the kids, but that tends to be more kids' books and picture books. So yes, I do read everywhere, but it depends on what kind of reading that I'm doing. So personal stuff is usually home or while I'm traveling. Work stuff is usually work reading. Question 7 is one book at a time or several at once. My preference is one at a time, mostly because I read so quickly that I just like to get through the story and get it done and dusted. If I am going to read multiple books, it's easier if I'm reading a fiction and a non-fiction because then I can put them down and I don't get them confused in my head. If I am reading 2 stories, it's typically a physical and a digital ebook on the go because it just helps delineate between the types of things that I'm reading. Question 7 is reading out loud or reading silently in your head. I read in my head. I don't tend to have an external commentary, so I'm not really talking to myself while I'm reading, but I do have a very impressive ongoing commentary inside my head, which I'm sure a lot of people do as they're reading. So I will talk to myself as I'm reading and thinking about what's going on and, you know, wondering what the author's doing, but it tends to be all internal rather than spoken out loud. Question 9 is do you read ahead or even skip pages? I don't typically skip pages. I can skim them if I find that a section is particularly slow or dry or just something that's taking a long time to get to a point. I can skim it so I'm a lot faster, but I do at least try and glance through the page and see what's going on before I turn the page. Question 10 is do you break the spines or do you keep them like new? I actually don't tend to break spines on my books. I'm thinking about books that I've read quite a lot. I've got Caressed by Icy because I'm going to talk about it in a minute. And I've read this book, this physical book, 3 times. I've read the story 4 times, but I've read the actual physical book 3 times and the spine is not cracked, but it is nice and floppy. So that's probably one thing. Yeah, I don't think I intentionally break spines for any reason, but I do come back to books over and over, so they do get a little bit more floppy over time. Short answer, no, but I'm sure it will happen at some point. I should also say I don't consciously try and keep them looking like new. I don't care about that because I like my books to look like I've loved them. But yeah, I think I just unconsciously try and keep them looking as new as possible for as long as possible. Question 11 is, do you write in your books? Now, this is the conversation that Tiffany and I were having in another one of her videos a couple of weeks ago. And this was around how she uses page flags in her books, because I also do that and you guys know that I do that. I wanted to know her process because I'm constantly sort of adjusting mine depending on the book that I'm reading and the series that I'm reading. I have been known to write in my books. I don't do it often, but I tend to do it for books that I really love, that I have a really strong connection to, or that I've reread multiple times and I want to enhance the reading experience. One of the books that I actually wrote in was Star Wars from a Certain Point of View, because if you don't know, I'm a total Star Wars nerd. This is a collection of 40 short stories celebrating 40 years of Star Wars. And as I was reading it, I was going through and underlining sections and writing, you know, comments in the margins and responding to things that were said in the text. Long sections of commentary, rewriting quotes in different ways, you know, because this was something, for me, this was something fun to read and something, you know, dear to my interests and passions and things like that. Another one that I've actually written in is the aforementioned Caressed by Ice by Nalini Singh. I've also tabbed it. I'll talk about the tabs in a moment. I recently reread this in February. I was buddy reading it with Izzy, and I'd already done all the tabs for this book. So while I was reading it, I actually sat there and I was underlining and adding comments and things like that as I was reading directly into the book. I don't mind writing in books because Caressed by Ice is one of my favorite books. I know I'm going to keep it. If it was a book that I thought that I might get rid of, I won't actually write on the actual book because it could go to a new home. I'm very confident this is not going anywhere for a very long time. So every time I read this now, I will probably add things to the notes and the annotations. In terms of generally annotating my books, I tend to use the page flags. Again, I've talked about this before. My process hasn't changed significantly. I tend to buy these in bulk and then I have them as I'm reading. Pink means favorite quotes. I love collecting quotes. That's just a thing that I do. Orange has evolved a little bit. It used to be things that were problematic. Now I tend to use it more as social things about that relate directly back to our world. So it could be social commentary, it could be problematic elements, it could be anything that directly comments on something that's happening around the world. Like I use that for orange. Yellow is for relationship stuff, green is for plot points, blue is for anything that is emotional for me. So if it makes me cry, if it makes me laugh, like that typically gets a blue. Light purple down the bottom is for particular character development, and purple changes depending on what it is that I'm annotating. Mostly because it's really dark, so I tend to find particular things to use this for. Last year when I did my massive reread of the Side Changeling series, so I annotated all 20 books, and I've got 2 of the books here because I wanted to show the difference. Like I used a lot of tabs because I was doing a lot of in-depth, you know, reviews and things like that. So I've got something like 16 hours or whatever of reviews for this series. Anyway, I made a really conscious decision at the time to follow some kind of plan with these, and I had already annotated with page flags some of the books in the series, so I was going through and fixing things up. So this time I actually, on a post-it note, I actually mapped out exactly what all the colors meant. I've got them in all the Side Changeling books because they changed a fraction between books. So in Caressed by Ice, the purple reflected world facts for the Side Changeling world, whereas in every other book in the Side Changeling series, dark purple is for tracking Judd's character arc, because he's my favorite and I'm a weirdo like that. So I tracked his entire arc through the whole series because he comes up fairly frequently in the majority of books. So I was, you know, tracking him quite a bit through the rest of the series. Similarly, I recently reread the Green Creek series by TJ Klune, and I annotated them for the first time because this was the first time I was reading them in a physical copy. I'd previously read them in ebook form. And I typically have a different process for my contemporary romances. For Real, which is another favorite, I actually followed my normal process, but when I read Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake, I only used one color, and that was just because I didn't feel the need to track absolutely everything that was happening in the book. The pink was mostly just my favorite quotes, which is my default. If I don't want to track everything else, I typically track my favorite quotes in the book, and for that I can use any color that I like. Mostly because when I do my full-on color process, I end up with half-finished post-it note flag things. So I have to find a way to actually use them up. What I will often do is just, you know, swap them over when I run out of things. You might notice I tend to run out of blue and green very frequently, particularly if I'm, you know, annotating a series. So I have to find a way to use everything else up. So I will swap the colors around if I need to, but for the most part, I have a standard process that I follow. And then it just depends on what the book is if it's a contemporary or if it's a fantasy or a sci-fi or something like that. And I'll change up this as needed. And the last thing I want to say on annotations is that for my absolute favorite books that I'm constantly rereading, I've now started putting in the dates that I last read the book, so I can see when I read things and, you know, if I read it in ebook or if it was physical or if I annotated it while I was reading it on that round. So yeah, that's basically my process. The last question is just to tag some people that you think you would be interested in hearing their responses to this tag. So I'm going to tag Bree from In 11 Words, Julie from Keep Calm with Coffee and Books. I hope I said that right. Sorry if I didn't, Julie. And Bianca from My Bookworm Sanctuary. So I will leave their channels linked down below. Please don't feel any pressure to actually do the tag, but if you would like to, I would love to see your answers. And if anyone else would like to do this tag, feel free to do it because I find these things very fascinating. In the comments, I would love you to let me know where your favorite place to read is. And if you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a pink heart emoji down below. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.